just before I introduce our speaker today, I'd like to just tell you about 2 other upcoming CERC events for this semester. On April 8th, Friday at 3 p.m., we have Dr. Donald Lowe, Associate Dean of Research and Executive Education from NUS. He'll be giving a talk titled Challenging the Singapore Consensus. And April 9th, the day after, there'll be a workshop, an all-day workshop, entitled The Singapore Model and Its Influence on China. So if you have any questions, you can find us on the Facebook page and our CERC blog.
And they need to register for the latter event.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. So register for the latter event. And you can also contact Irene Chan if you have any questions about how to go about doing that.
And this is Dr. Tom Patton.
Oh yeah, I'll let you move. Sorry, that's right. I'm Dr. Tom Patton, the associate. Usually Mark is the one who does all the introductions, but since Brooke, Dr. Schedneck, is a good friend of mine, I wanted to do the introductions today. So I'm the associate director of the Southeast Asia Research Center. And so I'd like to introduce Dr. Brooke Schedneck, a very good friend of mine. For many years we did our masters together back in the States, a long, long time ago. We took all sorts of courses on Theravada Buddhism, Southeast Asian studies, but we've been in touch ever since because the world of Southeast Asia Theravada studies is quite small, so we're always in the same orbit, which is great. So now Dr. Schedneck is lecturer in Buddhist Studies at the Institute of Southeast Asian Affairs at Chiangmai University, Thailand. She holds a PhD in Asian religion from Arizona State University. Her main scholarly interests include the intersection of Buddhism and modernity, as well as the emerging global Buddhist landscape. The title of her monograph through Routledge's series on contemporary Asian religions is titled Thailand's International Meditation Centers, Tourism and Global Commodification of Religious Practices. She has been published in Contemporary Buddhism, the Buddhist Studies Review, the Pacific World Journal, and the Journal of Contemporary Religion. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Brooke Schedneck, and she'll be giving a talk entitled Spreading the Buddhist Teachings Today, Thailand's International Meditation Centers as Sites of Missionization.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you everyone for coming. So today I'll begin my talk with a question. Why do you think Buddhism is enjoying such a global and international appeal right now? Well, there's a number of factors. Maybe it's a meditation practice, or perhaps it's perceived connections to scientific rationalism, or its connections to peace and tranquility. Well, all of these factors are part of the answer, but going to the root of the answer to this question, I will argue, is a kind of missionary spirit that's popular with modern audiences today. And this is a missionary spirit that has rarely focused on conversion, but instead on a discourse of spreading the teachings. And so I'll talk about this in the context of contemporary Thai Buddhism, looking at the context of international meditation centers and at Thai Buddhist monks as modern-day Buddhist missionaries. When Thai Buddhists interact with the international community, they're not just responding to interests from outsiders, but instead they are actively helping to shape the appeal of their religion. So the International Meditation Center becomes a site of missionization as well as a way to understand the logic of Thai Buddhism, and showing us how Thai Buddhism works in practice with strategies of action that I'll show that are both connected to the history of Buddhism as well as the teaching tradition, as well as the contemporary modern ways of thinking as well. So with this introduction in mind, I'll turn to my main argument, which is about the importance of missionization within shaping modern Thai Buddhism. So my argument concerns reframing the considerations of missionization within the context of Buddhism in globalization. So I'm not arguing about an essential element of Buddhism that has a missionary essence, but stating that there are some aspects of the Buddhist tradition that are important to and give inspiration to monks today in spreading Buddhism. So although Buddhism has been labeled as a missionary religion, it's rare for scholarship to discuss it as such, to analyze the category of mission as it applies to Buddhism. And so, for example, there's only 2 recent works on this topic, and both of these authors analyze Buddhist mission as connected to if it's similar or different from Christian ways of doing missionization. And so I agree that with one of these authors, she talks about how, Linda Learman, how Buddhism has a different kind of missionary spirit than Christianity, and we can't use the same kinds of ways that we think about Christian mission to talk about Buddhism. And then the few works of anthropological and historical scholarship characterize Buddhist mission as either connected to diasporic networks and lineages from Asia to the West, or as civilizing and nationalizing movements within a Buddhist nation state, as we see in Thailand with the central government sponsoring programs to missionize to the ethnic highland people. Or we can see there's also missionization projects within from one Buddhist nation state to another, like during the colonial period from Japan to Korea. So Buddhism has not been exempt from missions with the goal of conversion within the context of colonialism and nationalism, but this certainly is not the case in Thailand's international meditation centers or in missionizing to religious others outside of Asia. So it's important to pay attention to the power dynamics at play and look at the particular religious others when we try to understand Buddhist strategies of missionizing. So none of the works that none of Buddhist scholarship really analyzes the ways that local Buddhist monks can be missionaries in their home soil, and how within globalization this means paradoxically that Buddhist missionaries, they don't really need to travel anywhere when people who are interested are coming to them. So Buddhist studies scholars tend to think of Buddhism as either located within Asia or moving out to the West. But Buddhism also interacts on the international stage in its homelands through these kinds of international audiences coming to learn about Buddhism while traveling. So because of this, I'm advocating for a broader concept of mission that can accommodate these ideas within Thailand's international meditation centers. So in the same ways that definitions of religion broadened when considering Asian religions that don't include a supernatural God, there have to be broader also definitions of missionization that can include Buddhism, which isn't always focused on the goal of conversion, and within globalization that doesn't even have to require travel. So how do Buddhists think about missionizing? Well, they continue to missionize in distinct ways. They build on historical models, such as bringing knowledge and building powerful Buddhist monuments, powerful Buddhist stupas and images. And they continue to do this in places like Los Angeles and London. But Thai Buddhists in Thailand have created new strategies for missionizing, and that is to allow that takes advantage of globalization and religious tourism. So allowing non-Buddhists to come and participate in a meditation retreat, and demonstrating how missionization is part of the dynamic forces within Thai Buddhism. And I'm going to discuss this example of Thailand's International Meditation Center as a missionization site through looking at the historical resources within the Buddhist teachings, as well as modern strategies of missionizing. So I'll talk about missionization within Buddhism, giving three examples of Buddhism as a missionary religion from textual sources, and then look at the space of Thailand's international meditation centers, and then the actors, the International Meditation Center meditators themselves, the international meditators, and their teachers. And then looking at one method for translation that's used within these retreats, and that is looking at translation. And finally, I will talk about how the International Meditation Center has been successful from a missionary perspective, in that it has created transnational Thai Buddhist networks outside of the International Meditation Center. So first, this is the most important quote for understanding Buddhism as a missionary religion that's been quoted by many scholars, and it says, "Walk, monks, on tour for the blessings of the many folk, for the happiness of the many folk, out of compassion for the world, for the welfare, the blessing, and the happiness of devas and men. Let not two of you go by one way. Monks teach Dhamma that is lovely at the beginning, lovely at the middle, and lovely at the end. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who, not hearing Dhamma, are decaying, but if they're learners of Dhamma, they will grow. And so this quote is important within the Pali Canon, the authoritative scriptures of Buddhism. It appears 3 times in there, but I've taken this one from the most quoted version of this from the Mahavagga, that's part of the Vinaya. And scholars have called this as the Buddha's Great Commission, and where here we can see that Buddhism is similar to the other to the other missionary religions, to Christianity and Islam, and that Buddhist disciples of the Buddha are tasked with going out and spreading the message to others. But they are asked to look for those, especially with little dust in their eyes, or those who have some understanding already and will likely be able to understand the Buddhist teachings, ones who are already curious and interested. And so scholars discuss this passage most of all, but there's other aspects of Buddhism as a missionary religion, and one important one in Southeast Asia is the motivations for missionization. And we can see that is important when we think about the eventual decline of Buddhism as an important idea within Theravada Buddhism. And in this teaching is thought that the Buddhist teachings will eventually disappear, as everything within Buddhism is subject to impermanence except for the final goal of enlightenment. And so within the Pali text there's numerous schemas for how this decline will work out, but one of the most known ones from the authoritative commentary, the Visuddhimagga, is this 5,000 year scheme that begins once the Buddha dies. So every 1,000 years something else will be lost. So first the ability to attain insight, and then the lack of monks living according to the Vinaya, and a loss of textual knowledge, lack of adherence to the ascetic life, and then finally the disappearance of the Buddha's relics altogether, so there's no more physical remains of Buddhism left at all. And so this schema, however, is not definite, but actually it's flexible, and it depends on the actions, the ways that the Buddhist religion is enacted by Buddhist actors, by institutions, by Buddhist countries. And depending on how their actions are, they can hasten or abate this schema. So it's flexible. It doesn't necessarily have to happen within this time period. And so ways to slow this decline include studying the scriptures, maintaining proper monastic ordinations and rituals, studying Buddhism, and also teaching and spreading Buddhism beyond the boundaries of one's community. And so we see the importance of this idea of the decline in Burma in the colonial period with the loss of the king in Upper Burma that Alicia Turner has recently written about, as well as in Thailand. It's the sexual and financial scandals of Buddhist monks that have been widely covered in the media since the 1970s that has signaled a decline of Buddhism for some. And so this aspect of the tradition gives us some of the motivation for missionization. But there's one more aspect of the Buddhist efforts to spread the teachings when we look at a chanting book for Thai Buddhists. And so this chant reveals also something about Buddhist missionization, and this is a chant that a layperson will say to a monk in order to ask for a teaching, ask for a sermon or a Dhamma talk. And so the layperson will say, "The Brahma god Sahampati, Lord of the world, with palms joined in reverence, requested a favor. Beings are here with but little dust in their eyes. Pray, teach the Dhamma out of compassion for them." So this is from a chant that's based on the Ayacana Sutta from the Sutta Nipata. And this evokes the moment from the Buddha's life when he was still deciding if he should teach or not teach what he's learned after his enlightenment. And this god Sahampati is trying to attempt to convince him to do so. And so the fact that the layperson asked the monk for this Dhamma talk in this chant reveals two things. First, that the Buddhist teachings are closely related to the modern day interactions of the monks and lay people, as well as that Buddhism follows a missionization strategy of teaching those who are curious and interested, like we saw in that first quote. Those people with little dust in their eyes are the targets for this missionization. So of course this is not always the ideal, this is the ideal, and this isn't always followed, but we see this rhetoric at work within Thailand's international meditation centers. So we'll look at the ways these characteristics of waiting for those who request the teachings and wanting to slow the decline of Buddhism play out in this contemporary context of Thailand's international meditation centers. And so within this picture here, I think you can see that there's a number of international audiences sitting next to these Thai Buddhist monks here. And so the fact that we can have this group of international meditators coming and wanting to sit in meditation during their vacation in Thailand is quite striking if we consider that during pre-modern meditation, meditation was primarily a monastic pursuit that was conducted through individualized meditation techniques with a meditation teacher, a monk who would have just a few disciples, and he would offer his teachings based on his knowledge of his individual students and give them the teaching that they needed. And this all changes during the modern meditation when we have the mass lay meditation movement that began in Burma in the 1950s with Mahasi Sayadaw, and there comes to be centralized and standardized meditation techniques, so you can have hundreds of people sitting in a room together, all meditating and all practicing the same meditation technique. And so these standardized methods served a number of purposes and had two consequences. First, it allowed lay people to practice meditation with the same goals as monastics. So this could serve the function of slowing the decline of Buddhism. So lay people, they may not be able to memorize large chunks of Buddhist texts like monks, but they can probably take a month off and sit in a retreat and maybe gain access to steps towards the final goal of enlightenment. And so practice becomes more important now than text, especially for lay people, because this is something practical, something that they can do. And secondly, the meditation retreat practice allows Buddhists to make claims for the universal nature of their religion, that these meditation retreats are portable, they're able to be replicated in diverse environments. And now that they're open to lay people, this opened the door for non-Buddhists as well to participate. And so the meditation center becomes a way to stave the decline of Buddhism in that it can spread the Buddhist teachings not only to Buddhist laity, but to any non-Buddhist who is interested. And so then this led to the International Meditation Center. So what is an International Meditation Center? Well, there's about 200 regular meditation centers in Thailand, but a small proportion of these would call themselves international meditation centers, and that means ones that are able to accommodate an international audience with consistent instruction in English. So maybe it's between 5 to 10% of these centers are international ones. However, they are able to still teach us about globalization in Buddhism and the ways that Buddhists practice missionization in this context and understand the motivations of Thai Buddhists. So in my research, I looked at 13 of the most well-known of these meditation centers, joining in the retreats and conducting interviews with the teachers and with the international meditators. And this International Meditation Center became especially resonant, this institution in Thailand, because of Thailand's large tourist industry that both Buddhist monks and national institutions took advantage of to promote their country and their majority religion. And so if you were an international meditator, at first if you went into a retreat, you would right away learn this meditation practice, this meditation method that they would teach at the center that you chose. And so you wouldn't learn anything, so these non-Buddhists, they don't learn anything about the monastic community, about the temple itself, about what Buddhist lay practice, being a lay Buddhist is like. It's just really focusing on this meditation practice. And these centers are quite diverse. They have different sizes, different styles of teaching, some different meditation methods, as well as some are located in rural environments, some are located in the city. But all of the centers are based on this mass lay meditation model where the meditators are practicing a similar daily schedule and trying to maintain continual mindfulness. And so that's basically the International Meditation Center, and their locations are following tourism patterns. From my research, I found that these centers are really located, of course, in places where tourists are going. And in Thailand, tourists visit central Thailand, southern Thailand, and northern Thailand. And so I'll give you an example of the founding of two of these sites of international meditation centers to give you an idea of how these missionary motivations work. And so in the south, Koh Samui, in the south it's really the sun and the sand, of course the beautiful beaches that attract travelers. And on Koh Samui, Ajahn Po is the founder of the Deepa Bawan Meditation Center that began there in 2006, and he had always wanted to have an international meditation center when he saw the influx of tourists starting to come into his island, because he's born in Koh Samui in the 1980s, and he really felt like this was a superficial engagement with Thailand, and he saw that there was people going to the beach and then going back home, and he really felt like that was a shame, and he wanted to add another aspect to their experience, and so he started this meditation retreat there, so that would be possible for the tourists to have this more beneficial dimension to their vacation from his point of view. And in the north of Thailand, it's the kind of cultural activities that attract tourists. There's in the mountainous landscape, there's abilities to go hiking and do a kind of a homestay with the ethnic Highland people. There's cooking classes, massage classes, elephant training, and so the meditation it kind of fits in with this cultural experience. And so here we have an example in Mae Hong Son where there was a lot of travelers coming by this very touristy road, this windy highway, 1095 from Chiang Mai to Mae Hong Son, and they would pass by this beautiful forest temple called Wat Ba Tambua, and there's a friendly abbot, and so the first tourists that stopped by, they went and they talked to the abbot and they asked him so they could learn meditation, and he taught the first people who came and asked, and then he established a whole international meditation center based on this perceived need that he saw. And he's actually from the forest tradition, which in Thailand it does not have the master meditation model. They have a different kind of model, but he changed it when he saw this need. So you can see that these meditation teachers, they take advantage of tourism and the global popularity of meditation through creating this new kind of institution for this curious population. And so to give you an idea of the people that are there, these international participants, from my observations and from my discussions with the teachers, their gender is basically balanced, but their ages are quite wide-ranging. So there's going to be a little bit majority of the younger international meditators, because that's more who's traveling, but there are really international meditators of all ages, retired expats who live in Thailand, as well as professionals on vacation. But the nationality, of course, is more difficult to ascertain by observation, and not many of these centers keep statistics about their participants, but two of them do in Chiang Mai, and out of those two, we can see that the statistics show that it is really the English-speaking Westerners who are the majority of the international participants. They are from North America, from Europe, and Australia, making up the top 10. There's some people who are coming from South America, Africa, East Asia, other areas of Southeast Asia, but really a minority. And I could see this when I talked to the Thai monks, and I would ask them about their international participants, and so there's a word in Thai that just means international people, Kondang Chat. And then when the teachers would answer back to me, they would always inevitably change it to Kon Farang, which means the white people. So they would always think about it as just a Westerner phenomenon. And it is conducted in English, so it is limiting for other populations. However, with the rise of Chinese tourism, and especially in one temple, we're seeing a lot of Chinese people coming in to learn meditation there. So the dynamics of the meditation center, it could be changing. So that will be interesting to follow. And in terms of the teachers who are teaching the international audiences, they are majority Thai monks, and they fall into two different categories. One is this kind of older abbot figure who knows some English and teaches both the international meditators and the Thai meditators. But then some of these abbots don't really know that much English, and maybe they have too many students, so they task their younger monks who know more English to just teach the international meditators. So the International Meditation Center, it opens up these social spaces so that different kinds of social roles are able to teach meditation. But when I talk to the teachers about their motivations for teaching, the international meditators, they would talk about it as spreading the Buddhist teachings. It's very important, and then showing the spiritual side of Thailand, like we saw from Ajahn Po, this kind of nationalistic ideas to show that Thailand has this spirituality to offer. And they would talk about it as their duty to meet the needs of this curious population. However, it was difficult to discuss a mission, this term and the idea of missionizing with the Thai Buddhist monks, because there isn't really a good Thai word for this. The words in Thai and Pali, Dhammacharik and Dhammatut means like messenger of the Dhamma, and Dhamma wanderer. And those both are the names of these formal programs that the Thai Sangha instituted in connection with the government to spread Buddhism to the ethnic hill tribe groups, along with some overseas missions. So because these monks didn't see themselves as part of these formal programs, they wouldn't call themselves that word. And then if you say the word for missionary in Thai, you just use the English word and you make it like a Thai pronunciation, missionary, and then if they knew that word, then they would say, no, I'm not a missionary because I'm not trying to convert anyone. I'm not like the Christian missionaries. So the limiting definition of missionaries is affecting the Buddhist monks too, in being able to describe what they're doing. And so their emphasis, but we can see that because their emphasis is not on conversion, they make that very explicit. Instead, their emphasis is on sampling and experimentation. And this works very well with the modern tropes of the religious marketplace, where a lot of the Westerners who are part of these programs are wary of anything that comes close to conversion. And so these International Meditation Center teachers, they let their audiences know this is the case, that they're not interested in conversion right away in their promotional materials, in their pamphlets, and in their websites through some words like this. And I have two examples of quotes from their pamphlets. In the Wat Rumpeln, the Northern Insight Meditation Center, they say mental development is a personal experience. It does not matter if you're a Christian, Jewish, or Muslim, nor is it important what nationality or color you are, as each person in the world is longing for a better life. So the universal nature of Buddhism is seen here, as well as looking at this population of Christian, Jewish, and Muslim. And secondly, at this Middle Way retreat that comes out of Wat Dhammakai, their pamphlet asks, for whom is meditation good? The retreat is open for people from all walks of life, races, ages, sexes, faiths, and beliefs without prejudice or discrimination. It is good for anyone who wants a happy life, a life that has an aim, a life that is full of meaning. So again, this universal nature of meditation. And specifically, Thai Buddhism provides examples of these missionary motivations that value experimentation over conversion. And this coheres with trends in modern religion that has been studied by modern religious studies scholars. And they all reveal that this is a priority for many. And especially Westerners, who are the majority of the travelers to these international meditation centers. But when you enter into a temple, these teachers have to work to kind of further convince their international participants that they're not interested in conversion, because when you're at the meditation retreat, you're actually within a Buddhist space, you're in a Buddhist temple. And so they have to adapt and change this retreat for the preferences of their audience, who are more interested in non-religious and non-devotional activities. And so this idea of translation has a history within Theravada Buddhism as a missionary strategy. And we can see this in Southeast Asia during Theravada Buddhism's movement to this new cultural context, where it enters in through the indigenous religion of spirit cults, or the animist religion of making offerings to this spirit shrines. And so this provided the framework in which Buddhism could enter, and one that was used to convey Buddhism at the popular level. And so this incorporation of spirit cults within Buddhism in Southeast Asia aided in making connections to local ways of thinking and effectively spread the Buddhist teachings. So the International Meditation Center teachers, they don't incorporate other religions, but instead they use what their audience is interested in. That's kind of modern discourses of psychology and secularism to attract that audience. So we can see that spreading the teachings is part of the flexibility of the Buddhist tradition rather than extreme accommodation to tourism, and it doesn't simply respond to tourist demands but takes advantage of this interest to spread the teachings in a way that resonates with both the Buddhist teachings and with modern discourses. And we can also see this history of translating meditation, specifically within the history of modern Theravada Buddhism, with these two figures, with the very famous Burmese monk, Lady Sayadaw, and how he had both Burmese and some Western disciples, especially we know about his correspondence with one Pali Text Society scholar, Caroline Rice Davids, and when he wrote with her, he would talk mostly about Buddhist psychology and Buddhist science, things that she was interested as well as he was interested in. However, this did not affect his own traditional cosmology and understanding of Buddhism. And we see this as well with the International Meditation Center teachers. They're not taking on the worldview of these international meditators. In fact, the international meditators don't have much interaction with the Thai Buddhists themselves. They're only talking to these International Meditation Center teachers. So they don't really have that much impact on the Thai Buddhist laity. And Sri Lankan Buddhist leader Anagarika Dharmapala, he provides another example. He thought that Westerners would not be that interested in merit making when they came to learn meditation in Sri Lanka, but certainly they would be interested in meditation. And he did not find this to be a reductive translation. And in fact, we see this at the International Meditation Centers in Thailand as well, that Thai Buddhists, when they come to a retreat, they have a full program of discussions with monks and in a group. They have Dhamma talks, they have chanting sessions, but when the international meditators come, they just do the meditation practice. They don't have any other kinds of ways to supplement the retreat with other kinds of understanding about themselves or Buddhism. And so none of the meditation center teachers themselves, they don't talk about or know explicitly about these leaders, but it's interesting to see the ways that these similar issues of cultural translation have resulted in similar strategies of action to promote spreading Buddhism to different target audiences. And we can see the kind of flexibility of Buddhism and how emphasizing different aspects of it that resonate with different populations is possible. And so we'll look at the ways that specifically international meditation centers are doing their kinds of translation for the international meditators. And so of course I'm using the word translation not to mean just translating from Thai to English, but to translate from one cultural idiom to another. And so the International Meditation Center teachers, they do this. They change Thai Buddhism into fitting into a more secular and psychological framework. They're removing the rituals. They're using, some teachers will use psychological terms like anxiety and depression. But I'm going to talk about one of these strategies in particular, translation for individual choice, and looking at the ways that they use this to appeal to this audience. And so by individual choice, I'm talking about how international meditators, they often have these kind of personal preferences, and they're able to access the retreat through optional activities that these International Meditation Center teachers allow for. So they translate the retreat into a number of options. And so these teachers who teach both Thai and international groups, some of these abbots, they know that they have to switch from the Thai group, who conforms to the established roles and authority of the monastic figure, to the international group that really has their own sources, their own inner sources of authority, and are following an individualist orientation. And I think, as we know, one common misperception of Buddhism by these international meditators, and then more broadly within the popular culture, is that it can allow you to find your own true self or find your own kind of identity. And so, but instead of explaining this or talking about the doctrine of non-self to the international meditators, the meditation teachers, instead they have a faith in the direct experience of insight. And they believe that when these international meditators will learn the practice and will do the practice, then they're going to understand the Buddhist teachings through the meditation. So they don't need to explain these Buddhist doctrines to them. It's going to be very difficult for them to understand. But if they do the work of meditation, then that is all that they will need. So that's why the meditation is so important in these centers for the international meditators especially. And so I'll give two examples of these ideas. And one of these is at the Dipabawan Meditation Center in Koh Samui. And here, even on the website before you arrive, it talks about the individualized activities and optional activities you can have here. And so chanting, Buddhist chanting in the morning and the evening is one activity that can actually cause tension in the Buddhist meditation retreat, especially for those who practice other religions. And so on the website to this meditation center, it says, some people may feel that Buddhist chanting conflicts with their own religious beliefs. If so, you need not chant along if it makes you feel uncomfortable. So the teachers, they translate the retreat into a kind of range of practices that fit within the model of personal preferences and experimentation. And they demonstrate that chanting is not a necessary component of the retreat for this group. So this gives you the idea of the importance of practice from a missionary perspective. And when I talk to the monks, they would say, if these international meditators, if they learn about the monastic life, if they learn about some of the devotional activities, it's not going to mean anything to them because they're not going to become monks, and they probably don't have a temple in their hometown. But something that they can do, that they can always take with them, is meditation, is this practice. So the full worldview of Buddhism isn't what's important for these monks to get to spreading the teachings, but it's just the meditation practice itself. Sampling this practice is enough to qualify as spreading the teachings. And secondly, this meditation center at Wat Umong has a good example, and you can see from this picture the kind of informality between the monk and the international meditators that has come about. And if this was Thai Buddhist, this picture would look very different, and in fact it could be quite offensive to Thai Buddhists because the monk is seated at the same level as them. And so if these were Thai Buddhists, he would be up on that little step, and his robes actually are looking actually very untidy, so he would fold that up, and the Thai Buddhists would be in a Y position, but here they're just kind of relaxed. And so they have this kind of informal attitude as well with the international meditators when they entered the retreat at the opening ceremony. And so when Thai Buddhists come into this retreat at this temple, they need to prepare the flowers, candles, and incense needed to receive the 8 precepts that marks their entrance, a ritual marking of their entrance into the retreat and living in a temple. But instead, the international meditators are told in the cafeteria, there's a list of the rules and you can just read that and kind of memorize it. And so they don't have this ritual marker, they don't become full subjects of the retreat. Instead, it's really not including these other kinds of aspects of the retreat besides only inner transformation. And so we can see this preference for an individualized and inward practice. And when I asked the meditation teachers there, why the international meditators don't have this ceremony, they said because they don't want it. So it was really in reaction to them. It wasn't anything that the teachers thought about beforehand, but it was the preference for the international meditators that they found, and then they switched it so they did not have to participate in any rituals. And so some of the meditators that I've been talking to are just one-time meditators, but some of them do develop a close relationship with a particular teacher, and this can result in some creation of new transnational Thai Buddhist networks. And we can see this, first of all, through international meditation lineages. So some of these international meditators study under a teacher, and then they become very committed to meditation and to the kind of method that their teacher teaches, and they become authorized to become teachers. And then very quickly they are encouraged to go to their home country and establish a branch center of that particular lineage. But not all of these teachers, not all these meditators want to become teachers, but some of them do become quite close to their own meditation teacher. So they sponsor teaching tours of their teacher in their home communities. And so Ajahn Nawi, the abbot sitting in the center there of Wat Tamboi Thon, he goes to America almost every rainy season and travels around to his Thai disciples in America as well as his Western disciples, giving meditation retreats. And from talking with him and other teachers who do this, it really creates a kind of circulation between Thailand and the communities that he visits, so that a lot of these people that he's meeting in America are then coming to his temple. And then, so now he always has a number of international meditators at his temple, and when the Thai Buddhists see that he is traveling around the world, that there's people from all over the world who are in his temple, this makes them very interested in supporting him. So this international disciples can motivate local support. And so now we can see from these transnational Thai Buddhist networks the kind of possibilities and some of the successes of the International Meditation Center. And so just to conclude that these centers we can see help to protect, or from a Theravada Buddhist perspective, are seen to help to protect and propagate the teachings and practices of Buddhism. And if the Buddhist practice is spread throughout the world, then it won't be in decline, but will thrive through this new audience. And the missionizing strategy contains particular translation practices that focus on experimentation and sampling over conversion. And so through these examples, we can see that missionizing is an important motivating factor and dynamic force within Thai Buddhism's interaction with the international community. So instead of distinguishing between Buddhism abroad and Buddhism at home, it's important to look at the convergences of these two, and how missionization is both grounded within the textual history of the tradition as well as able to be adapted to new opportunities that arise within globalization. So Buddhist kinds of missionizing are a major factor in their motivations and actions, not just while traveling, but in engaging the international community in their local spaces, and as a factor in the appeal of Buddhism today. So that's it. Thank you. And
We have time for
there are
questions.
some questions.
Does anybody have questions? Oh, awesome.
Hi. Thank you for your talk. I'm curious about what you did. You did mention that the rituals would be fatal for international meditators, and from your field work or interviews, would the international meditators really have aversion towards the real Thai rituals?
Yeah, because now they're just removed, and there's no asking, do you want to participate or not, for some of these rituals, for some of these centers. But when I talk to the international meditators, and I mean, I'm not sure, some of them might be interested in it as a kind of like, cultural activity and something that they were interested in. But I think some of these teachers were really affected by the first kind of meditators who did not want to participate in these rituals and how kind of strongly they felt about it, that they did kind of remove it. But when I went to these centers, the teachers knew that I was interested in Buddhism, and I said, I want to go to the chanting. I want to, with the Thai Buddhists, and they said, okay, that's fine, because we know you have an interest in it. But they were worried that some of the international meditators were just going to get out of meditation, and so then it's like, this is your job. You have to meditate, and that's why you're here. You're not here to, so it's kind of like seen as disingenuous if you want to participate in the ritual, because then you're not participating. Your role in the center is just to meditate. But if the Thai Buddhists go to chanting, then it's part of the practice. But for the international meditators, it's not part of the practice.
Okay, I am from Thailand. I'm Thai.
Cool.
Right. My question to you essentially is that in your studies, you look pretty much, you focus pretty much on International Mediation Center in Thailand. I'm not sure whether you have investigated into what's called the Thai International Monastery in the
Wat
northeastern.
Pananachat.
Yes, Wat
Yes.
Pananachat. Yes,
Mhm.
yes.
A little. I stayed there. I did not include them in my study.
Yep.
Because they're not following the mass lay meditation model. They're following, they're more focused on the monastic life.
Yes.
So I went there, yeah, but they're
Uh-huh.
not, I didn't include them in the study.
Oh,
Oh, yes.
Do you include a political economic perspective in your research?
Do you mean like the ways that these centers are run monetarily? Or?
And the place it has now in Thai society?
The place it has in Thai society? It's hard to know how, there isn't, from my book, I'm the one who's, kind of gathered these together to call them, Thailand's International Meditation Centers. They call themselves International Meditation Centers. They say like Sun Patipat Tham Nanachat.
Yes.
But the Thai Sangha doesn't talk about them really like as a group or anything like that. And in the support and the kind of donations for these centers, there are some centers that are just Thai, and then that are Thai and international, and there are some centers that are just international. And those centers that are just international, they have a hard time supporting themselves because there isn't as much Thai. They really need the Thai support. And the international meditators, they don't have this kind of culture of donation. But when the Thai and the international are together, then they are able to be supported by just mostly by the Thai donations.
Another Thai here. I'm basically interested in the fact that these meditation centers strip down the Buddhism to the very core, in order to make it appealing to non-traditional Buddhist audience. Now, what I'm interested in is that can this finding be extended to the local audience as well? Because at the moment, as you know, that Buddhism in Thailand is very organized and corrupt to a certain extent as well. So can this finding be extended to help make Buddhism less organized, a bit more casual, and make it appealing to the general local audience?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, of course, there's Thai people too, right, who are not interested in, just interested in meditation. They don't necessarily want to participate in rituals, and we can see that a lot of middle class, urban Thais especially, are interested in other kinds of forms of outside of Thai Buddhism, like the Thich Nhat Hanh in Khao Yai, his group. It provides a kind of core Buddhism model that some Thais are attracted to. So I think you can find this kinds of sensibility within the local Thai Buddhism as well, for sure.
It's not going to be. I can't follow that up. It's not going to be that exciting. Yeah, the picture of the informality, the casualness
Yeah.
of that group was shocking to me, and I was wondering, do they at least for the I mean, especially females in interacting with the Thai Sangha. I mean, how is that?
Okay, that the men are next to the monks.
That too, right? So how do they navigate the Vinaya rules? You know, the rules that monks need to follow, especially with regard to interacting with females. You know, how is it? Do they kind of just keep a certain set for the Thai, and then they say, well, we'll kind of bend the rules a little bit? When we have
Yeah, it
the
depends
rules?
on the space, right? So those centers that are just international, they might bend the rules a bit, like you'll be sitting at the same level as a monk when you do your interview. But if you're in a space where there's Thai Buddhists, then you have to do it right. I mean, you have to do the bow, you have to do everything in there, and that is also causes some conflict. So it depends on the space, but in terms of the touching, I mean, they don't really go over that when you enter. That isn't part of the discussion, as far as I am aware and remember. I think they just make sure to keep a distance from the females. But it's really the forest tradition that's really strict about this. That isn't part of this model, but they'll let you know right away. Like if I went to interview them, they say you need another man present, and no other meditation center temple was like that. So it depends also on the strictness of the tradition and the monk.
So the traditions also, so the Mahanikai do these kinds of international temples.
Mhm.
The was it the Dhammayut? Was
and
this
the
other
Dhammayut, yeah.
Dhammayut?
It's more Mahanikai.
Mahanikai. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because they're the majority anyway, so there's more opportunities.
Uh-huh.
And the Dhammayut more do the forest meditation. And then,
Other questions?
thank you.
And that's, sorry, I have one more too about the money making ventures, or money. So this, but I thought, oh, this would be a good way for them to make money. But then you brought
No,
up
it's not,
because
actually.
there's no. I guess Westerners might have this kind of aversion to mixing religion and money.
Yeah.
But then also there's not that kind of
Exactly.
culture of donating
Yeah, they're
with the
like,
Thai. So they're struggling.
yeah,
So you say they're
you
struggling.
live for free.
Uh-huh. Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, one of the teachers told me that he was worried about how some meditators would come and they were just like waiting for their plane to get back, and they were using this as like a free accommodation.
Mhm.
So I mean, some of these travelers, backpackers, they don't have money,
Mhm.
and they're not thinking of it as, well, I should give the amount that I would have spent on myself if I wasn't here. I mean, of course, some of them do donate large amounts that have money, but that's rare.
And sorry.
Can I just follow up on that question? I mean, one of the fascinating things you point out is that, I mean, besides the religious aspects, besides the genuine interest in, sharing with those who have this interest in meditation, is also the sense that, is kind of correcting the image of Thailand that tourism sometimes gives it. And that I mean, to sort of use the word mission somewhat differently, one of the mission or the missions behind this is to show that different part of the country, and to show that that a lot of stereotypes about the country are simply not true. I mean, do you see that playing a role? You mentioned it in passing, but do you see that as sort of as a major motivation, given the fact that it's not really, as some might suspect, a profit-making kind of thing, but rather based on some sort of ideals?
Yeah, the Buddhist monks, for sure, that's part of their ideals, and so the government arm of promoting tourism has recently collaborated with the monks to make it more into a money-making venture. So the meditators aren't going to spend that much at the retreat, but they're going to spend money maybe on Thai Airways coming into Thailand. They're going to spend money in the hotel before and after, and the food before and after their retreat, so that they do see it as a possibility for bringing more tourists in to promote this kind of tourism, and to take advantage of the fact that this is popular in globally right now. So they want to show Thailand as a spiritual destination as well.
But it's, I mean, just to follow up,
Yeah.
but it's also an image issue.
Yeah,
Basically.
and
It's
yeah.
I mean, if you take it from a broader sort of tourist and national identity perspective.
Yeah, I think that they are trying to change the tourism and the monks. Mm-hmm.
Sure, you can take. We still have a few minutes left.
I'm curious about the tradition of meditation. You did mention that Mahasi Sayadaw's practice maybe one of the key, is it a key term for evoking or spreading the kind of modernized meditation in Thailand?
Well, they took his meditation model directly. Still in Thailand, the Burmese method is
Really?
one of the most popular Vipassana methods.
So among the 200 meditation centers you did mention, all for Thailand or in some areas?
200 is the estimation for all of Thailand.
So, but how's the proportion of doing the so-called Burmese meditation?
That's hard to say. The majority, I'm not sure the percentage. The dynamic one is like very small. That's the only real indigenous one of Thailand. That kind of meditation.
But how about whether the Thai monks,
it's difficult to
develop their own kind of...
They developed their own kind of style. Like Ajahn Tong's method is from Chiang Mai. He's based on the Mahasi Sayadaw method, but he's adapted it a bit, based on his own, I think, experience, not based on like the Thai people. And then they talk about it as also the 4 foundations of mindfulness meditation. But it's hard to know if the way they're thinking of it is one and the same as the Burmese method, which I think it basically is. But I'm not sure if that's how they're always thinking of it, because it'll always say the method is based on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, but that's pretty broad.
Yeah, but the Mahasi style, the Burmese one, the Burmese Mahasi style.
It just means rising, falling.
Yeah, and also one
It doesn't, and the walking meditation in steps. But the scanning method is mostly just Goenka,
yes.
and not in the Thai ones.
Yes. But how about the Goenka's method? Is it popular in China?
Yeah, it's popular.
Also,
Yeah, very.
but the forest tradition is quite different from this
Very
the
different.
Mahasi and the Goenka.
Yeah, very
Because
different.
They don't have a strict schedule in forest tradition.
It's really focused on like living together, the monastic life, as well as the mantra, Budo, and keeping that Budo with you.
Yes.
And walking, and not walking in steps, just walking, don't groan, like back and forth.
So last question. So about the international meditation centers, which tradition or which meditation practice they normally mostly they use? The Burmese one or the kind of Thai forest one?
The Burmese one.
Burmese one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thai Buddhist monks usually have practical political influence to the country. If they do, how big is the impact?
On the politics?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few political monks in Thailand. You guys know. And they can have some pretty big impact, like we're seeing now in the government getting involved in the selection of the head of the Thai Sangha because of political issues, basically. But yeah, it depends on the monk. But there are a few monks that have a lot of influence and that are courted by the government. Do you have any comments?
I would say that some monks do get pretty political, like leading a protest, for example. But in general, they do have a say. Like, right, if you're a famous monk in your area, you can influence candidates. You can do all sorts of things that would be considered unethical from a very strict sense of Buddhist standard.
They can't vote, but they can have some.
Yeah, they can say a lot of
Further questions? Okay, so just like to a round of applause for Dr. Schedneck.